Hello, everyone. My name is Nauraiz Rana, and I'm an economist with the World Bank. I'll be hosting today's program on New Wave, in which we will be talking about the very recently finalized IMF bailout program for Pakistan, which is the 25th program that Pakistan is going into. And this also happens to be the second episode of our political economy series that we initiated last time with Haroon Khawaja, who has served as an advisor to the Prime Minister and also as an advisor to the Chief Minister of Punjab, brings with him a wealth of tangible knowledge, policy related, economy related, as well as very hardcore governance experience. So welcome, Haroon Saab, and let's talk a bit about this new IMF program.
Thank you. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. So on September 25th, communique from IMF, as you know, a 37-month extended fund facility for about $7 billion, special drawing rights, 5.32 billion, which is 262% of the quota of Pakistan in IMF, was approved. And out of which just over $1 billion after deduction of about $7 million of charges were dispersed to the State Bank of Pakistan last week. IMF seems to be pretty, go ahead.
Yeah, so I was going to say, so do you think, like Mr. Mohammad Aurangzeb, who's the finance minister of Pakistan, has claimed that this will be the last time Pakistan will or is going to the IMF? Do you think there's any possibility or semblance of truth in this statement?
Well, I mean, I've heard it so many times, so I'm gonna have to wait. I have to wait for it to happen to believe. So let's see how it goes. It's right now we're just in the first week of the program, so it's too early to say. Let's see.
Right. So the other thing is that a lot of the programs that Pakistan has gone into, Pakistan has barely been able to fulfill or see through the completion of only one or two of them. And the reason being that, they come with a certain menu of policy levers that need to be employed. And it's very hard it has historically been very hard for Pakistan to comply with all of them. And this has resulted in the program either falling out or the disbursement not completing itself. So this time around, it is expected that Pakistan would increase its tax base. Again, structural adjustment, the government would cut down on its expenses, and there's some austerity measures. How capable do you think the current government is of doing that, or what indicators do you see, of their willingness to be able to comply with these regulations? And also, once they do employ these measures or they start employing these measures, how is it going to likely impact the life of the common man?
Okay, let's first address the question, will Pakistan be able to comply with the program and finish it this time, with the hope that it's not going to have to go back to IMF again. So let's try and simplify it. Let's start from the mother of all problems, which is the fiscal deficit. So, to make it simple, fiscal deficit is basically your income of the government minus the expenses of the government. And because the expenses of Pakistan government are consistently higher than what their income is, there's a consistent deficit which has been over 7% for the past so many years. What we end up doing is we bridge the gap by borrowing. And we're continuing to borrow, which creates inflation. And inflation, as you know, is the worst tax on the poor. And it also, cut the long story short, results in devaluation of your currency. It has a host of other problems that the country faces. And that's why any sensible government of any country, their key focus is always to keep the inflation under control, whether it's a Western country or
a developing country like Pakistan,
the developing country or any other country, right? So here, consistently, we're doing over 7% fiscal deficit. We're continuing to borrow. Our fiscal, there's a fiscal discipline and debt sustainability act that we have, which is passed by the National Assembly, which requires our debt to be in 2024 around 57% of the GDP. Compare that to 78% that we have currently.
Yeah.
So, we're not even following our own laws and constitution. So the debt is continuing to climb to unsustainable levels, due to which the debt servicing basically pretty much eats up, over 75% of what you earn as your income. So this is on the domestic front. On the external side, it's pretty much the same story. Your exports, the dollars that you're earning, that are coming in, are less than the dollars that are going out, to the extent that, every dollar that you earn, $3 are going out. So again, you have that gap, external financing gap, for which, again, you have to go to these multilaterals, to, other countries, friendly countries, continue to borrow. And again, we've gone to the extent where no one is willing to lend to us, without conditions. So that's where we stand. So if you want to resolve this, you have to actually go to the basics, fiscal deficit. How do you resolve it? You increase your taxes. You increase your tax base. You increase your earning. So here's the problem, Nauraiz, and to answer your question. While you try and increase your tax base, you've been trying to do that for 70 plus years. You haven't been able to do it. You've got the same machinery, FBR. The last so-called meaningful change that occurred in FBR was that its name was changed from CBR to FBR. That was the change that was brought in. It's pretty much the same entity, which has consistently failed to evolve itself with the fast changing. And now, from the perspective of the taxpayer, why people say, why should I pay tax? Because here is an agency, a tax agency, which is famous, well known for harassment and rent seeking. And the taxpayer thinks that if I start beeping on the radar, what do I get in return? I have to send my kids to private schools. I have to have security guards to protect me or my business. I have to install a generator to get, sustained electricity. So, the roads outside are dilapidated. The water quality is so bad that, I have to go and buy filtered water. So there is nothing that a taxpayer expects the government is doing, or thinks that the government is doing for us. So it's more of a social problem, It's not switch on, switch off. You increase the tax base. It's not like it's a bigger issue.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it goes without saying that the problems that we're facing, which manifest in the form of a continuous debt trap or a debt cycle, is the fact that we've not been able to implement the structural changes, create those productive enhancements or those productive capabilities that would enable us to export more. That would also kind of, re-engage the cycle of the economy, and therefore we're facing that way. But then another component of fiscal deficit, which you rightly pointed, is government spending. And a lot of government spending that we tend to see is they tend to accept, the government tends to incur that spending in the form of very lavish spending on itself. Recently they've taken some policy measures enhancing the salaries of certain, different government grade officers, and then increasing the pensions. And then there's a lot of benefits that go, including the procurement of luxury cars and luxury electronics, iPhones for so. And all of them tend to elevate the burden that foreign reserve tends to, tend to face. And that's also one part of the problem. So the right criticism would be that while they expect the common man or the public or the citizen of Pakistan to bear the burden or the brunt of these hardcore policies that the IMF tends to push, a lot of onus also falls on the government. So what do you how do you see that problem And would you rightly hold them accountable to it as well?
Absolutely. So, let's take an example. This same government, the first PDM1 tenure that they had 2 years ago, they formed a committee of looking at this thing of expenditure, and it was headed by Mr. Nasir Khosa, who used to be chief secretary and the principal secretary, both in the tenure of this party.
PDM, yes.
So he actually came up with a report, and which said that you can comfortably cut 1/3 of the expenses of the government, right?
Wow.
So that was conveniently shredded. So it was their own man. Well, he has a great reputation, but someone known to them. That's why they brought him, and a very credible person who knows the system very well and all that. So he said 1/3, and it was trashed. Then they formed another committee, which came up with several suggestions and recommendations. They transformed it into yet another committee. And that committee had, Dr. Bengali. I don't know if you've heard of him. But he's a prominent
economist. Yes, absolutely.
And he recently resigned. And according to him, he resigned because he had worked with the committee and came to the conclusion then that there were 54 departments that need to be closed, and there are 17 divisions, right? Keep in mind that in Pakistan, ministries are termed as divisions, the federal ministries, right? So, and in provinces, ministries are referred to as departments. So each division has a secretary, which is a federal secretary, and each department in a province has a secretary, which is a provincial secretary. So Dr. Bengali, with the committee, concluded that there would be 17 divisions that could be axed, because after 18th Amendment, these divisions are not needed because they have been devolved to the provinces. And there are 54, associated departments. They also need to be axed. And guess what? Well, it turned out all ministries were going to stay, and 53 out of 54 departments are also going to stay.
Why do you think that is? So despite knowing what the problem is, and despite having these are very low-hanging fruits which the government can implement, right? And this would cut, like you said, like 1/3 or 33% of their expenses. But still, why is it? Are they so entrenched in malpractices and corruption that they can't make these very desirable and much needed changes? Why is that so?
Well, there are several things, but I think the main thing is if your modus of governance is bureaucracy driven, so you basically depend upon bureaucrats to run a government, then you're basically in the hands of the bureaucrats for advice. And if you're telling the bureaucrats, or if a report or a committee is saying that bureaucrats, 17 divisions, meaning 17 federal secretaries' posts, will have to be axed, because they're not going to be very happy. So if they are, on the driving wheel, they'll never let it happen. So you need to have a mindset which is an independent mindset, a mindset that is basically looking for the benefit of the people, not the bureaucrats.
It's actually a very fair point, and something to ponder over. That it can be it fairly said that the system to some extent is held hostage by the redundant bureaucracy that exists in Pakistan.
Of course,
right?
Of course. And we're going to talk more about it when we talk about civil service reforms. But absolutely, you're right.
Perfect. So, like now coming, yeah. Do you want to complete your thought? You were going to say something.
Yeah. So, that deals with the domestic side, how do you increase the tax base? Well, it's not like you switch on and you increase the tax base. They think that they're going to use the stick policy. They're going to go after these people. They're going to coming up with all these. FBR came up with this plan this week, all sorts of things. The so-called non-filers, actually a non-filer. It's the only country in the world which has this category called non-filer.
Concept of non-filers, yes.
Basically, non-filer means that you don't pay tax and you can get away with it by paying a higher rate of indirect tax. So this was a term, or I'd say facility, introduced by FBR. Now, after a few years, now that everyone is happy and well set with it, they're saying, okay, well, we're just going to end this, and there's going to be no more non-filers. And if you're not a taxpayer, which means not a filer, you won't be able to purchase property. You won't be able to travel abroad. You won't be able to, open a bank account, things like that. So, let's see how successful they are in implementing it. It's been tried many more times.
Perfect. No, absolutely. I think we do understand the fiscal point of it now, thanks to you. But now coming back to this specific IMF program, a lot of people had been, no, I wouldn't say they were advocating, but they were saying that what Pakistan needs is a much bigger bailout program for it to reach a point where it can start self-sustaining itself. Because Pakistan historically, our monthly import bill ranges from $6 to $8 billion. And this $7 billion in comparison to almost 140 billion of external debt is a very menial amount. It's not enough that would enable Pakistan or push it, give it the much needed push that it needs to start addressing its debt-related problems. So on that aspect, is that true? Do you think this is not enough amount that could have helped Pakistan give the necessary push? And secondly, countries who have been able to get rid of the IMF programs and who've been able to, find self-sustainable mechanisms, such as India post 1992-93, what were they able to do, and what is it that we cannot do?
Well, we have to understand that IMF is the lender of the last resort. And IMF is like, you walk into a hospital and you're obviously not doing well. You walk in a hospital, and IMF is the ICU. Right? So it's something out of the ordinary, something that doesn't happen.
Exactly, it's not the norm. Yeah,
once in a while. If you start to treat ICU as your hotel room, and you feel so comfortable being in ICU that you refuse to vacate that room, things become different, and things become what we are facing nowadays. So, again, we have to understand that IMF is not something that's there to finance our external needs. IMF is there to give us the breathing space. This $7 billion is not going to, as you rightly said, in a $140 billion debt. $7 billion is neither here nor there, but it is going to give us the cash flow flexibility for 3 years to mend ourselves and get out of this consistent, external side deficit, and work on our debt management plan, so that we have a plan in place that in 5 to 7 years we're going to bring it under control. We're going to start bringing in more dollars compared to what the dollars are going out. So it's giving you time to fix your house, right? But because it's the number 25 IMF program, to tell you that we're just taking it as, oh, actually no, it's actually something which is going to solve the problems. No, it's not going to solve the problems. It's giving us the opportunity to sit down, think, and put in a plan to solve the problem. So we have to take it from that perspective.
So do you think if there was a competent government, or if there is a competent government, they can literally leverage this cushion space, like you said, of $7 billion enough to position itself in a manner that the country can rid itself of this continuous trip to the IMF 5 years forward?
Absolutely. Now, look, I mean, you've got to give due credit to the finance minister, because he's a banker. So one thing he definitely knew was remittances, right? So I think I was mentioning, perhaps we talked about it in the previous program. So there were 1,200 foreign exchange companies a year ago, before they were mostly shut down by the state bank. So 1,200 foreign exchange companies were bringing in remittances at an average of $426,000 per month. That was an average of 1200. 16,000 branches of banks, 16,000 branches of banks were bringing in remittances at an average of $125,000 per month, right?
Wow.
So the foreign exchange companies were bringing in around 3.5 times more than the bank branches. So you see, there was like 3 to 4 times growth
More,
potential.
yeah.
So State Bank came and they shut down the foreign exchange companies, which was the right decision because they were doing a lot of other stuff as well, which was putting pressure on the rupee, and told the banks to take over those companies, barring a few, which were the big foreign exchange companies. So now, I believe the foreign minister, who's a top banker of Pakistan, he understands that this is a low-hanging fruit. There is a potential of increasing the remittances from 30 billion to perhaps touching $100 billion. And imagine if the remittances from 30 go to 100, your problems are solved. This is just one intervention, just one. And there are like perhaps 20, 25 interventions that we can do.
Perfect. Yeah.
So we have to sit down, we have to concentrate, we have to put in a plan, and we need to project it out in 5 to 7 years. We need to overcome this problem, and we need to use 3 years of EFF
So,
to put in a plan.
So basically, if we're able to employ a multi-pronged approach, looking both at how to balance out a balance of payment and a current account deficits and our fiscal deficits that are mostly driven by the imbalances in government fiscal spending and the expenses that they have, the revenue generation, we can successfully rid ourselves of frequent trips to the IMF going forward. So there is hope, but there's contingent upon contingent on some certain measures that need to be adopted. And just one last question. So while these measures are being adopted, do you think it will impact the lives of the common man? Like, how would it? Because, it tends to put a certain strain on the common populace.
Well, it's a subjective question. Let me tell you why I'm saying this. So Pakistan, I always say Pakistan is a country which runs at 40 miles an hour. And we're used to it. When Pakistan runs at 40 miles an hour, everyone thinks Pakistan is doing really well. When the political instability and all this usual stuff that happens in this country, that 40 miles kind of slows down to 20 miles an hour. And we all feel the pinch. And the worst, is the situation of people that your question relates to. So, but then there are people like you and me who actually believe that Pakistan's potential is 200 miles an hour.
Absolutely,
so it depends which lens you're wearing. If you're the 40 miles an hour lens, if it's coming back from 20 to 40, you're saying, wow, we've macroeconomic stability, and look at IMF, and look what I've done. The inflation is in single digits. Reserves have increased, they're booming. Reserves are stabilized. The currency, foreign exchange rate has been stable. Stuff, right? I've done my job. But if you have the 200 mile per hour lens, you're just basically, you haven't even started.
Yeah. So
to answer your question, well, if we're back to 40 miles an hour, which it seems that we're on that track, it'll be back to the norm. You're from 42%, your poverty is going to get down to 40%, and then maybe 39%, at best 38%, right? But and I know, a lot of us know that Pakistan can actually do much better. Already down to 20%, 25%.
Absolutely. I think that's a great segue for our next program, in which we'll start talking about how we can, help Pakistan accelerate from 40 miles per hour to, like you mentioned, 200 miles per hour, and how can we realize that potential. But thank you so much for your time and for unpacking the IMF program and what it has to offer. and what one should expect from its implementation. All right, thank you.